From the release of those July Fed minutes to the ongoing trade war with China and all of President Trump's remarks about new initiatives that he was considering to juice the economy, so many different factors are affecting stocks today. Joining us from Memphis to discuss the markets, David Waddell. He is CEO of Waddell and Associates. David, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Good to be with you.
Well, let's talk about the Fed. You heard our conversation with our last guest, who is our colleague Brian Chung. He's over there in Wyoming right now. Big week for the Fed. What do you expect to come out of the meetings in Wyoming, and how many more cuts do you expect in 2019?
Well, Jerome Powell has proven to be pretty inadequate at the microphone. So what the market really wants to hear is things are good, but we're going to cut rates a bunch. I'm not sure he's going to say that. I think the most likely scenario is that they double down kind of on what they said in the Fed minutes, which we got yesterday, which is things are good. We're thinking about being more cautious. We're thinking about rate cuts. But I think Esther George probably is the pulse of where the Fed is right now, which is, to me, they're behind the curve. And until something changes, they seem to be willing to stay behind the curve. Not quite sure why, but market thought maybe we'd get a big bullish bounce out of dovish statement a few minutes ago, and then they saw bad economic data in manufacturing. It's really the fundamentals that matter, and we're just being whipsawed around by Fed speak right now.
What I found really interesting, David, was that you mentioned that the two people capable of removing Trump from office are Fed Chair Jerome Powell and the Chinese president. Do you think they have that much power?
Absolutely. I mean, the grand bargain that President Trump has with the United States populace is, as long as you're getting richer and the economy is growing, I'll stay in office. Well, the two people that have control over putting us into recession really are, number one, Jerome Powell, who, if he maintains what I think is kind of a tight-fisted approach to interest rates, then he tips the economy further to recession, because that's really monetary constraint, not stimulus. And then what's happening with the trade war is fiscal constraint, not stimulus. So what we've got right now is both monetary constraint and fiscal restraint. And the architects of that, yes, Trump has a role to play, are China and the Fed. So, you know, I lived in China for a while. They operate a little differently than we do, and Xi is not an elected official. And so if he thinks that there's a better negotiating partner if Trump's out of office, then just ratchet up this trade war. Chinese GDP grows 6%. We're growing maybe 2%. Europe's already into recession. They've got a little bit more capacity to slow as an economy. He's not going to be removed from office. You know, these are conspiracy theories. I don't know. But the interplay at the end of this economic cycle between all these policymakers is what's most directive to the market.
But, David, the problem with China waiting this out is that President Xi risks more damage to the China economy, because we have seen evidence that these tariffs have been hurting the economy there. So talk about that problem.
So, you know what? They are slowing as an economy anyway. They're trying to mature that economy. To be honest, what they need is more of a consumption economy and less of an import-export and trade economy. And so they're trying to lean that direction anyway. So if I'm Xi and I'm not worried about being reelected, you know, I've got a little bit more, I think, negotiating power in this than people give me credit for, because they're not riots in China. They're riots in Hong Kong, and living there, those riots are not about democracy. They're about the Gini coefficient and the fact that it's impossible to live there unless you're rich. So I don't think Xi is really worried. I mean, you know, his grand bargain with the Chinese population is the same as Trump's. As long as things are growing, then he gets to continue being, you know, president for life. But he's not worried about being reelected. And you know, the Chinese are doing a whole lot better than they have been doing, and they're growing at 6%. If they grow at 5.8, I think he's going to be fine.
David, let's wrap this way. With so much fear right now about a recession, we have some experts coming through here every day on our live shows saying, oh, it's coming, and others saying no, too much kind of FUD, and people are overreacting to that brief inversion, although we got another inversion again yesterday, and people kind of shrugged to that the second time around. But with all of those concerns in the air, what are you hearing from your clients, and what are you telling them?
So we manage money for families all over the United States of America, and the way that we manage that money is we as employees and as owners in the firm run our funds the same way we do for our clients. And so we're all in it together in our firm. When I look at the array of data, not the array of headlines, but the array of data, what I see is significant softness, maybe exacerbated by the trade war, maybe exacerbated by the Fed being behind the curve, but we're 10 years into this economic cycle. The only time it's really worth hedging a market is if you think a recession's around the corner. It's not worth hedging a 10% or a 15% downturn because there's not enough return disparity to get the sell right or wrong and the buy right or wrong. So we've hedged the portfolio right now. I don't like the data array. That doesn't mean that we're, panicking, but I think there's a reason to be cautious here. We're going to get the release of the leading economic indicator index, I believe, today. And if that slips below zero, you'll have the 10 3-month curve inverted. You'll have the 10 2-year curve inverted. You've got new orders in manufacturing negative. You may have the leading economic index rolling over. You're seeing manufacturing hours get clipped. And so those who are saying the economy is fine are relying on the strength of the consumer. And I get that. But that's not a leading indicator. The consumer is a lagging indicator. So right now, the data array, in my opinion, calls for being somewhat cautious, taking some risk off the table, and seeing where things go from here. Now, a Trump tweet could change everything.
Right.
But for now, the data, forget the headlines, urges caution.
All right, David, joining us from Memphis, and I'll be there in Tennessee in about a month. So
come on over.
Have fun over there. All right. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Appreciate it.